Hey, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Just want to make sure that the sound is on. So what a week. Um, I got some good questions from you all on my Substack, and obviously, if you want to ask questions here, that is also okay. Um, just doing a sound check, so if somebody could put in the chat if you can hear me. Otherwise, I probably look quite silly. Um, so, Tuesday, my book came out officially. Um, okay, excellent. Thanks, guys. Um, on Tuesday, and the debate was Tuesday evening. So I had a 20-hour day. Started really early to be on Morning Joe, and then the nerds and we had the Nerd Avengers at noon as always, and then we did a pre-debate discussion. We watched the debate, which I did with much trepidation, but as you all know, that worked out just fine. And we actually, I think it was Norm, Danielle, Jen Taub, Brian, me, and maybe one other person. If I'm forgetting, I apologize. But we stayed on until 12:45 in the morning. So it was pretty incredible. Um, and then of course, um, this hideous, racist lie that's being told about, Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, which, by the way, is JD Vance's state. So he's terrorizing citizens and, people of his own state for some kind of bizarre political advantage, which we'll certainly get to. And of course, Donald is along for the ride because nothing he likes more than scaring the shit out of people and putting their lives in danger. Then Thursday, I was at the 90 Street, 2nd Street Y, which is sort of a New York institution, with my friend Judy Gold, who moderated a discussion with me. And that was so cool. Like, yeah, I just as a reminder, my first book came out in July 2020 at the height of the COVID lockdown. My second book came out in August of 2021 during another COVID lockdown. So I've never gotten to do anything like that before. So it was incredible. And then yesterday I was in DC for an event at Politics and Prose, which is sort of a DC institution, and that was totally different vibe. Um And Gentile fellow nerd adventure was my interlocutor down there, and it was amazing, just hanging out in a bookstore with a bunch of people talking about the book. So yeah, I've been getting to do these in-person events along with lots of other media. So that's been great. And I will be in I'll be at the Hudson Library, and I think that's in Hudson, Ohio. Sorry, I don't know much about Ohio. I'm flying into Cleveland. So, anyway, I'll be there on Wednesday and possibly other places. I'm hoping to go down to Miami and do something, and I'd love to go out to the West Coast. But it's early days. Um, all right, that's my book talk. let's get let's get to your questions. I want to start. People have asked about, because I did not write this on my Substack because I didn't know about it yet. Um, oh my goodness gracious. I actually just said the reason I had changed the time of the Ask Me Anything Within Reason. And when I say within reason, please use your judgment. You probably can guess what that means. Um, was because I was supposed to have a 6:20, 6:30 hit, on MSNBC. And not too long ago, after I'd written or posted the Substack, I got a text from the producer saying that my appearance was getting bumped because of breaking news. Oh, which is, I mean, it's fine. I'll reschedule. It's not a big deal. I'm also exhausted. So I kind of don't mind, like, just kinda going to read a book and fall asleep after we're done here. Um, the thing was, though, I had no idea what the breaking news could be. I've been a little bit out of the loop last couple of days, and, I was traveling today from DC to get home, and I was on Twitter a couple of times. I did see something about a shooting in the vicinity. And then I see the statement that was put out by his campaign. And then I looked at the front page of the Washington Post and the New York Times. So I'll go through that in sequence. I see on Twitter, I'm like, okay, so what? In the vicinity of? And then this is what his campaign says. Donald they don't call him Donald, of course, but everybody should. Donald is safe following gunshots in his vicinity. No further details at this time, writes breathlessly Stephen Chung, his campaign communications director. Okay, Stephen. And then, as I said, front page of both the Washington Post, breaking news. FBI investigating golf club episode as Trump golf club episode as potential assassination attempt. The New York Times. Trump targeted an attempted assassination attempt. All right. Well, that's what it's evolved to. When I first saw this quote unquote news, there was an altercation between two men in the vicinity of the golf club that had nothing to do with Donald. We live in America. Thanks to the Republicans and the domestic terrorists at the NRA, all of us are almost constantly in the vicinity of a shooting. How many times are they going to fall for this? I'm not saying it's not that there was a shooting of any kind. Yeah, that's a big deal. I actually care about gun violence in this country. I actually want it to stop. I actually think the Republican position on guns in this country is insane. My position on guns, there shouldn't be any. Nobody should be allowed to have any kind of gun anywhere ever. That's my position on guns. That's my starting point in the negotiation, because their position on guns is everybody should be allowed to have every kind of gun they want anywhere they are without any kind of restrictions. That's absolute insanity. It might turn out that I'm wrong and that this was a targeted assassination attempt, but literally that was not at all what I was hearing out of the gate when I finally realized it was breaking news. And again, I didn't know until like an hour or two later. And now suddenly I'm looking at the New York Times and the Washington Post, and suddenly it's an assassination attempt when it started out as gunshots fired in the vicinity by two people who have nothing to do with Donald Trump. They were just in a fight together. I don't know. I do not know. We'll find out. But after what happened in Pennsylvania, the way the media just shrugged its shoulders and didn't seem to care that nobody, no medical professionals, nobody in the Trump campaign was um was giving us any information about any of it. And look, this is the problem. As I said, I don't know. This may have been an attempted assassination. I hope not. It may not have been. It's impossible for me to give Donald the benefit of the doubt. Like, I need actual facts by an independent third party. I mean, that's just where we are. And it is exhausting. And it is demoralizing. And it is frustrating. It's so frustrating that we're just continuing to live in yeah, some people don't think this is an important topic. I do. I don't think the whether or not there's a shooting, we'll find that out. The important thing is that we keep getting distracted and we keep letting the subject be changed. Because this is happening in a week after one, Kamala Harris won that debate so resoundingly and Donald Trump lost it so resoundingly that it should have completely and forever changed the course of this race. If that had been Joe Biden, he would have been asked to step aside and let somebody else run in his place. That's how bad Donald Trump's debate was. Even more importantly, in my view, the disgusting lies about Haitian immigrants and the lives that are being put in danger because JD Vance and Donald Trump will stop at nothing to stay in power. And they think they think that by attacking the most vulnerable among us, by going after vulnerable populations, that is how they're going to do it. It is absolutely unbelievable that doesn't seem to be disqualifying either. What the fuck? So breathe. Let's breathe. Everybody take a breath. Yeah. All right. Let's get to your questions because all of these things are touched upon. Okay. Let's try a slightly little lighter. I mean, it actually ends up not being, but okay. So Joe asked, what kind of an impact will the Taylor Swift endorsement have on the election, and will it activate enough voters to put Harris over the top? And relatedly, Elbert asks, do you think Donald's quote, I hate Taylor Swift post was meant to distract from JD Vance's 2 Sunday show quotes about admitting to making up stories for the media? So I'm going to take both of those together because obviously they're related. First of all, will Taylor Swift's endorsement of Kamala Harris have an impact? Well, I don't know. Endorsements typically don't move the needle much, if at all. I think the timing of it came right after the debate, so it probably, well, obviously it did get under Donald's skin because he had had such a horrible, horrible night, and it was it was a bit of a blow. I mean, this is somebody who has like 10 times, I don't know how many more times Twitter followers. She's like 200 something million Twitter followers, or Instagram, whatever social media platform she's on. What I do know is that it had a huge impact. There was a massive spike in voter registrations after that happened. So that's a really good thing, right? I mean, that's a really good thing. I actually think what will have potentially more of an impact is the fact that Donald Trump, who is a toddler and has no impulse control, posted in Twitter or True Social, I'm not sure, probably True Social, in all caps, and I'm not kidding. He actually did this. It wasn't a retweet or a quote tweet, or he wasn't quoting anybody else. It literally was his post, and it said, "I," all caps, "I hate Taylor Swift!" exclamation point. Are you kidding me? I mean, we could say that was perhaps a way to distract from JD Vance's disastrous appearance on television today, because in that appearance, I think with that abash, she of the absolutely brilliant debate performance in Atlanta, I say sarcastically, he actually admitted that, yes, he's lying about what's happening in Springfield, Ohio, because why shouldn't he? It's his way of getting people to pay attention to issues that aren't important and don't exist. Is anybody in the Republican Party asking him to step down for that? No. Is anybody asking Donald Trump to step down because he's trying to get people killed? People talk about Haitian immigrants who were here by invitation. They are here legally to do work. They're helping rebuild the community of Springfield. I mean, anyway, if that was Donald's goal, yeah, maybe he distracted from it, but he's distracted from it by doing something not worse, but JD Vance's opinion on things isn't going to have as gain as much traction as Donald's, obviously. Um, he actually the guy who wants to be the president of the United States, who I am so sorry to say, and will be for as long as I live, was the leader of the free world for 4 years, attacked a private citizen who has herself been dealing with terroristic threats. She's had to cancel concerts abroad because of being because the venues were being targeted by terrorists. Yeah, okay, she's extraordinarily wealthy and she can afford security, but you know what? Probably a lot of her fans can't. And also, she's a human being. That somebody with so much power would use it so recklessly is disqualifying. But, she's also not just any private citizen. She's probably one of the most popular and well-known people on the planet. I personally probably wouldn't recognize a Taylor Swift song if it stepped on me, but that's not that is has nothing that's not a put down of her. I just, you know, I don't get out much. I don't listen to the radio. I just listen to music I like that I'm familiar with. I am in a very tiny, tiny, tiny minority. I mean, I think she's great, I do. I think she's got a lot of guts coming out and endorsing Vice President Harris, because that could be tricky for somebody who in her industry, a large percentage of her fans may well like Donald Trump, you know? So it's it does take some measure of courage to do what she did. To do what he did is dangerous. And it seems lately everything he's doing is dangerous. And nobody's stopping him because the people who can stop him don't want him to stop. And we could ask why, certainly. for elected Republicans, it's proximity to power. That's all they care about. They don't care how they get it, and they know right now that, much to their everlasting shame, Donald is the only viable candidate. Nobody, like, who else? What, JD Vance? Are you kidding me? As for voters, they know that Donald doesn't do anything to improve their lives. They don't care. They don't care. They're not interested in having him make their lives better. What drives them is that he promises them that he's going to make the lives of people they hate or are afraid of or disdain or think are beneath them. Donald is going to make the lives of those people worse. That's what's going on there. So, here we are again. Is one horrible thing going to distract from the other horrible thing so that eventually neither horrible thing ends up mattering? We've been dealing with this for a very, very, very long time. Oh, by the way, I'm not saying that Taylor Swift isn't talented. You cannot be as successful as she is and not be talented. I'm not saying that at all. I just don't know her music. That's all I'm saying. um, you know, yeah, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Megan Thee Stallion. These are amazing, amazing, extraordinarily talented women. I'm just not as familiar with some of their music as I might be with others. That is all. Okay. So Thomas asks, who presides over the finalization of election results in January? Donald will go crazy if Kamala Harris is in charge. Well, I mean, it's not really like nobody's in charge of finalizing anything. Basically, let me put it this way. The votes are counted. The states, because of the hideous electoral college, each state has a certain number of votes, electoral votes. So in 48 states, if you win the popular vote in the state, you get all of that state's electoral votes. It's stupid and it's racist and it's a holdover from slavery days. I do not understand why we have not gotten rid of this fucking thing, especially since it benefits red states with small populations. It's anti-democratic. And the reason nothing's done about it is because we need a super majority of Republicans love the electoral college because they don't even have to cheat very much in order to win. Think about it. Hillary Clinton, I don't think Hillary Clinton lost. The story for another time. But, the margin, the electoral college margin was like 77,000 votes. For President Biden, it was like 40,000. I mean, that's how terrifying. Like, you could literally win the popular vote by 10 million and still lose. Really bad. Anyway, so the electors get sent, and on January 6th, which is a date which everybody should be familiar with now, and probably nobody was very familiar with it before 2021. On January 6th, both houses of Congress come together and certify the election. It's not like they're sitting there counting votes and trying to figure it out. Like, it's already a done deal. This is just ceremonial. And the person presiding over that in a ceremonial role is the vice president. That was Mike Pence's job on January 6th, 2021. And because Donald is not just a cheater, a sore loser, he's also a terrible person, and he's stupid, and stupid's the wrong word in this context. He's deeply ignorant about how America works. He let everybody think that Mike Pence actually had the power to overturn the results. I mean, And this was not something that happened just on January 6th. For weeks before that, Donald was setting Pence up with his followers and with members of Congress. So for the first time in 4 years, Mike Pence actually did his job, and we had an insurrection, which, by the way, is still ongoing because we don't know yet what's going to happen in November, do we? So yeah, it probably the fact that Vice President Harris will be presiding, assuming, like, oh wait, oh my God, I'm sorry, I just realized something. I was thinking listen, how long has the last 6 weeks been, really? It feels like 7 billion years. Okay, so I'm thinking in my head, Biden's running again. So if Biden wins, of course, Vice President Harris will preside. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. So what does happen if she wins? She can't preside over the certification of her own election, can she? Maybe it's the president pro tempore, which is, I think, Patty Murray now. I don't know. I'll find out and I'll let you know. But I don't think it could be her. In fact, there's a way to check this if anybody's that much of a nerd. So the last vice president to become president was George H.W. Bush. Did he preside over? Yeah. I'll find out later. Anyway, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but no matter who's in charge, if Donald loses, which he absolutely needs to, he will be losing his mind, or what's left of it. Okay, from CM Chambers, how is this monster so revered? Who do you think he's talking about? Let's see if there's an answer to that question in this question. How is this monster so revered, so shielded by the media, and allowed to spew filth and hate and violence, inciting rhetoric? Are we really supposed to allow the MAGAs to impose the reign of terror on the rest of the country? Yeah, I I don't know, man. I don't know. I've been trying to figure this out. I mean, I have speculations about it, you know. I think that a lot of people just look at him and they love what they see, you know. They mistake his pettiness and grievance for righteous anger, you know. They've bought the whole myth of him that was created by the what was that show called? The Apprentice. Mark Burnett has lots and lots to answer for. And there are a lot of bad people in the world. Sorry to say. And he validates them. He makes them feel seen. It's quite terrifying, actually. But you know, that combined with the total failure in our systems to hold him accountable, the failure of his father to hold him accountable, the failure of New York media to hold him accountable, for banks to hold him accountable, for Mark Burnett, the Republican Party, the criminal justice system, the IRS, the DOJ, and on and on and on. This is what you get. And then, of course, the media, they know by keeping him viable as a candidate and focusing on the horse race, they make more money. It's really it's quite extraordinary. But you know, we see how it devolves, how the danger increases. Remember back in, I don't know, 2016, 2015, his rallies, and he would there was a heckler or somebody, he would say to a person, he would say to the audience, "Hey, somebody, get that guy out of here, beat him up. If you get in trouble, I'll pay your legal fees." Okay, that also should have been disqualifying, but in the grand scheme of things, I mean, it's awful, but now he's actually targeting a population of people who've done nothing wrong and he's going to get them killed. I mean, seriously. That rhetoric keeps up, somebody in that community is gonna get killed. An innocent, hardworking person who's here illegally and has done nothing wrong. That's where we are now. And plus, of course, he killed about 1,000,000 of us with COVID, but there you go. Okay, so it is basically a perfect storm of horrors that keeps this guy in power. From Roger, I'd love to know if you, given both your professional training and your personal relationship with Donald, do you think he knows when he's lying? Yeah, I've said this before, and it's kind of a fascinating thing. Donald is the only person I know who can actually gaslight himself. You know, um, like I think there's a brief moment in which it also depends on what he's lying about. He knows he's lying about, the Haitian immigrants. He knows he's lying about, well, he knows he's lying about the Haitian immigrants, but then there are other things that are kind of similar in terms of the kind of lie they are, like, this horrific, horrific and dangerous lie about women and doctors killing babies in blue states because after 8 months of pregnancy, the woman's just like, "Yeah, don't want the baby. Let's commit infanticide." Or just, getting abortions in the 8th or ninth month, which is the thing that does not happen. Um, the way he talks about it, I just wonder if, because again, he's stupid. Uh, if somebody told that to him as a truth, and because it sounded good, and because he thinks it plays well with his base, who basically want women to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen all the time, um, maybe he does think that one's true. But then there's the other kind of lie, which actually gets at the core of who he is. The big lie. The lie about uh, c- uh, President Biden stealing the 2020 election. There are probably moments in which Donald has access to the truth of that, but that is such a narcissistic injury. He can't bear it. Now, again, in my family, the worst thing you could be was a loser. And that this was according to my grandfather, who was the only person whose opinion mattered in my family. He had all of the power, and you do not cross him. I mean, luckily for most of us, he didn't care about us at all. But if he did, so the only two people he cared about were my dad and Donald, because my dad was the oldest and he was supposed to be, um, he was the namesake. He was the heir to the empire. He was the oldest son. For reasons that are complicated and inexplicable, my grandfather just did not like my father, did not respect him. My father was an amazing human being. His dad just didn't see it that way. So he destroyed him. Literally and figuratively destroyed him. He died when he was 42. And um part of that was because my grandfather decided that my dad was a loser. Donald, 8 years younger, sees this pattern play out and gets the message. You can't be a loser. What does it mean to be a loser? To be like Freddie. What do I need to do? I need to be unlike Freddie. Freddie, my dad, was, well, handsome, but I guess that's not anything you can control. Uh He was kind, he was generous, he was funny, he was smart, and he was deeply accomplished. He flew 707s for TWA in 1964 from Logan Airport in Boston to LAX in Los Angeles. He's a very, very talented pilot and a very, very talented boatsman and fisherman. But my grandfather didn't care about bullshit like that. So, what makes you a loser? Actually, my family have some people in my family, including Donald, have said this to me. Um, you know, your dad was just too generous. Like, that's sort of what did him in. Like, what? They use the word kind as a synonym for pathetic and weak. So Donald was nothing like my dad, because that's what he felt he needed to be in order not to get ended by my grandfather. And he became all of the things you see today. And my grandfather liked it. So when he lost the election, do we seriously think that he's going to be able to take that in? No. So I think, yeah, again, there has to be this moment of consciousness. But in order to protect himself from the actual truth of it, he has to come up with a story that doesn't wound him so grievously. Yeah, he lost, but that's because it was stolen from him. So deep down, deep down, he knows. But he can't know. So yeah, it's the psychic energy the guy expends protecting his very tiny and fragile ego. Oh man, it would light up a city. Let's see. Karen asks, where's Melania? I don't care. The reason I'm answering the question though is not because I care where Melania is. She's a despicable human being. I assume she's probably in New York because her son just started at NYU, I think. But the reason it's well, I was gonna say relevant, and I don't think it's relevant, but just bear with me for a second. If Kamala Harris, let's say Joe Biden, because Joe Biden's not running and Joe Biden is also a man, so it's just an easier one-to-one comparison. Let's say in 2020 when Joe Biden was running against Donald, he and his wife Jill were not seen together for months at a time. Jill Biden didn't campaign for him. This is obviously hypothetical. They have this extraordinary marriage and love, and she was with him on the campaign trail all the time and campaigned for him vigorously. I'm just playing out this scenario so you can see where I'm getting at. So they seem estranged. They have nothing to do with each other. And then all of a sudden, a couple of months before the election, Joe Biden starts inviting this woman who's like 50 years younger than he is on the plane and to campaign events and to friggin' 9/11 memorial, etc. Do you think the media would let that slide? No, I do not believe they would. Especially if that much, much, much younger woman was as vile and racist and Islamophobic and despicable as Laura Loomer is. So not only and look, again, like the whole first lady thing is seriously problematic. I do not think it should be incumbent upon spouses or family members to campaign. It's a lot of work. It's risky. You're out in public, you're among crowds, you have a target on your back. I just don't think it should be not only necessary, I just don't even think it should be allowed. It's massive amounts of stress. Nobody's getting paid for it, and it's wrong. Um, you know, the quote unquote first lady, and we'll hopefully have a first gentleman soon. That's a ceremonial position that does not have a salary, even though it requires a great deal of work. I do not think anybody should have to do it. However, since when does the media not care what a candidate's spouse is doing or not care about the candidate's personal life, especially if that personal life is messy and, what's the word I'm looking for? Unseemly. I mean, remember how quote unquote Christian leaders reacted to Bill Clinton? Remember how they treated Hillary Clinton because after much counseling, she decided to work on her marriage? I mean, do you remember that stuff? And yet, Donald Trump completely gets a pass. So I don't care where Melania is. I think we are better off if she never shows her face in public again and never opens her mouth again. Although, by the way, she's coming out with a book. I'm guessing it's written in crayon. I don't know. But yeah, she's coming out with a book because I'm sure she has a lot of deep thoughts to share with us. The less we hear from her, the better. But seriously, the double standards. I'm not really sure why like corporate media it doesn't just like doesn't have its head explode. Not that corporate media has a head, but you know what I'm saying? Like how can they um deal with the cognitive dissonance that's generated by their hypocrisy? It's just absolutely shocking to me. But so it's sort of like less about where's Melania than why is this whole Laura Loomer thing not ending his candidacy. Let's see. All right, let's see what we got here. Oh, yeah, I have to figure out how to slow down the feed, so I apologize. I have not been able to do that. Oh, good one from Betty Veronica. Why the hell did the Fraternal Order of Police endorse a convicted felon? Well, let's play that one out a little bit more, shall we? Not just endorse uh a convicted felon, but endorse a man, not endorse the prosecutor. Prosecutors are on team law enforcement. Sort of seem like a slam dunk, right? But also endorse the guy who celebrates the people who attacked police officers, got over 170 of them wounded, some of them grievously, and 6 of them killed. What is that about? Well, I'll tell you. Um, it's not a great organization. Uh, so, you know, once again, the hands have been shown because what is Donald promising? He's promised, I mean, we already have this hideous mechanism that applies to cops. And of course, I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's a qualified immunity. So basically, it's sort of like what the Supreme Court, the illegitimate, corrupt supermajority in the Supreme Court did for Donald. Just like if you're Donald, then everything's a public, everything is an official act, and and you're immune from everything. Qualified immunity means if you're a cop and you killed somebody or hurt somebody, you were doing that in the course of your duty as a police officer. He's promising more things like that, and I don't know about you. I'm kind of sick of how much police officers in this country get away with. And, we had this conversation on the Nerds last week because uh, Tyreek Hill, the football player, had been pulled over and just abused by police officers, like, for nothing, for doing nothing wrong. And, he asked that question, "What if it wasn't me? What if it was somebody who wasn't me?" So, it's a systemic problem, and it's bad, as Tara Sedmeier was saying, and her husband is in law enforcement, it's terrible for cops who aren't like that. But it's not a few bad apples. The system protects people like that, and the system needs to change. So, um, they like the fact that Donald is gonna give them more power and, I don't know, more weapon. I have no idea, but that was disgraceful, and, they really, really, really showed their hands there. And yes, Donald will flip when, he finds out that Ben& and Jerry's, created a brand new ice cream just for Kamala Harris, and, I don't know, maybe Donald can get a maker of mashed potato flakes to name a mashed potato after him. Maybe. Um, yeah, so Rosebud, Rosebud Aim, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but anyway, yes, just saying she grew up in Bayside, Queens, which wasn't too far from where I grew up, and had a lot of friends who grew up in Jamaica, which is where I grew up, and Jamaica State's different world entirely, different world entirely. So when my dad and his siblings were growing up in Jamaica States, um, Queens, the borough of Queens, in which all of these towns are, Queens is huge. It's absolutely enormous, and it's densely populated. It is now, I believe, the most diverse place on the planet. It's so cool. And when I was a kid, it was very diverse, but it was also very segregated. So in Jamaica, I think when in the, 70s, it was probably 70% black, 30% white, something like that. But white people lived on one side of Hillside Avenue and most black people lived on the other side of Hillside Avenue. Jamaica Estates, on the other hand, was 100% white when my dad was growing up there. So no diversity, no economic diversity. It was like rich people and white people, which white people. Anyway, so um that probably didn't help the Trump children become better people either. Linda says, "Can you tell us more about the Elizabeth Christ in your family?" I can't say too much about her because I didn't. I think she died. Sorry. Let me tell you first who she was in the family. Elizabeth Christ, and it was Christ, like Jesus Christ was the name, but she's German. I'm guessing that's not. I don't. It's not a common name, obviously. Um, but it's spelled Christ. She was my grandfather's mother and married my grandfather's father. Amazing how that works. Friedrich Trump. I mean, it was Drumpf, but it was changed to Trump. So her name was Elizabeth Christ Trump. My grandfather's name originally was Frederick Christ Trump. And then, but grandparents from Germany, it didn't have the same connotation. So I don't know when this happened actually, but at one point he just took the H out of his middle name. And my dad and brother were both Frederick Christ Trump, Christ. No H. And actually, Christ is kind of a cool name, as it turns out. But that's Elizabeth Trump. I guess she was a bit of a force in her own right. Her husband, my great grandfather, died in the sorry, not the 20, the 19 I always get it wrong. 1918 pandemic or 1917 pandemic? One of those. Sorry. I know I should know this, but for some reason, I forget always forget which exact date it was. I'm sure somebody will tell me. Um, he died in the pandemic, which is one of those little historical ironies. So my grandfather was 13 at the time. Thank you. It was 1977, but we don't say Spanish flu because the reason it was called the Spanish flu because Spain was blamed for it. So we just try to refer to the year. It would be sort of like calling COVID the Chinese flu or Chinese pandemic. It's so funny. I'm getting some people are saying 1917, some people are saying 1918. Who knows? The pandemic that happened right around World War One, right around the end of World War One. What a time to be alive. Anyway, my grandfather was not alive. He was killed by it. And Elizabeth had 3 children who were well, my grandfather was 13. One kid was slightly older, the other was slightly younger, and they weren't poor, but they weren't, they weren't wealthy either. So, you know, also, she never really liked being here. She was homesick at one point, and when my great-grandfather tried to take her back to Germany, the German government wouldn't let them back in because he was a draft dodger. Weird how that happens. So yeah, I don't think she ever really took to being in America, and when they both came here, neither one of them spoke English. My grandfather grew up speaking German and had a German accent for a long time. My grandmother had a German accent so thick that it was hard to understand her. Um, anyway, when my grandfather was 15, my grandfather, in fairness, was a very smart guy. I mean, yes, he was a sociopath, but he was also quite smart. And he had this idea to start building garages because cars were becoming a thing. And yeah, he decided to start building houses for cars. And he was too young to start a business. So she started a business called Elizabeth Trump and Sons. But the older boy, John, my great uncle John, wasn't interested. He went to college, and he's the one who became the physics professor at MIT, which is what makes Donald smart. Okay. Anyway, so she started this business with my grandfather when he was a teenager, and as we know, it became very, very successful. And then she just kind of shifted into her role as matriarch. She lived in a building my grandfather owned a few blocks away from my grandparents' house. She taught her grandchildren, including my dad, how to play canasta, which my dad taught me how to play, which I actually love playing canasta. I haven't played it probably since my dad was alive. But other than that, she was not that this should surprise any of us, given the fact that my grandfather was one of the worst people who's ever lived, and had basically no human emotions. She was pretty withholding and cold, and strict, you know. But once the business took off, she stepped away, and it became my grandfather's concern. And I think part of that is because she understood gender roles in a very specific way that was she in a very specific way that was pretty common at the time. Women should stay home and be wives and mothers. So she helped. I don't want to say helped raise her grandchildren, but she was there a lot. Like she had dinner with them every night, for example. So I don't. as I said, I think she died in 1968, so I have absolutely no recollection of her whatsoever. My Aunt Marianne says that they were close. I don't know if that I don't what does close even mean in my family, right? Mm. Um, and again, my dad didn't really talk about her, it's just that she taught him how to play cards, which, hey, is not nothing. It's more than my grandparents did for me. Um, okay, yeah, I'm seeing all sorts of very interesting facts about the 1917/18 pandemic and why it was called the Spanish flu, but the thread is going so quickly, that I'm gonna look it up later because it's something we should all know, um, but, and it's probably interesting. Now here's a question, and then I think we're gonna wrap it up. From AJ, "Do I think there will be an October surprise that can derail the election? I distinctly remember when James Comey derailed the 2016 election, which I still believe Donald had a hand in." I mean, I don't think Donald had anything to do with James Comey. Donald was allowing the Russians to interfere in our election. He was indeed inviting the Russians to interfere in our election. And James Comey, who is just an arrogant, I don't really want to revisit that, but James Comey decided it was his job to put his massive thumb on the scale in favor of Donald Trump, an election that Hillary Clinton should have won and did win, in my view. So will there be an October? Listen, I feel like we've had 3 October surprises already this week, and all of them should have been disqualifying for Donald Trump. How is it possible that this person is still one of our 2 candidates for the presidency of the United States? We need to figure something out. Like, it should not be up to either party to allow this deranged, irreparably broken, cruel traitor to be at the top of the ticket. He should be in prison. It's absolutely stunning to me that we allow this to happen, that we do this to ourselves. Um, I just took a quick look at the front page of both the Times and the Post, and the FBI is looking at this as another attempted assassination. I I don't know. I mean, we know from from the first one that it was not politically motivated. Obviously there's a lot more we need to find out about this one. Um, it just I mean, one of the things about it, like, it did not surprise me that the first one was not a politically motivated thing because, and I'm not saying it never happens. I'm not saying that at all. But it's typically not something people on the left in this country do. If you look at domestic terrorism in this country, like 99% of the perpetrators are white, red leaning, or very extremely on the right white guys, right? I mean, so we'll find out more, but something's got to give. Something has to give. We will. Oh man. What is it? 7 weeks? You need to I know it's a sprint, but you can still pace yourself. No, you can't pace yourself in sprints. What am I saying? Sorry guys, we've got to run flat out for another 7 weeks. But we can find our moments. Even when you're sprinting, you have to breathe, right? Have to breathe. So I'm sure we'll be talking about this a lot on Tuesday. So please join us Tuesday at noon Eastern for the nerds. We also will have the nerds on Thursday at 12 noon Eastern, as always. I'm going to be on a plane, so I think it's highly unlikely I'll be able to join. But somebody will host in my stead. Um, and then I'm pretty sure after this week, which is a little bit crazy in terms of my schedule, we'll be back to normal, and I'll have a lot more videos on the YouTube channel outside of the nerds. And of course, we've got Jen Taub's amazing Morning Jen every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, and Danielle Moody has some great short videos called Get Woke, plus her show Democracy-ish with her co-host and fellow nerd adventurer Waj Ali, and Brian Karam's Reverse Shot on Saturdays. So lots of good stuff and much more to come. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. I really appreciate it. Sorry about the change in time. I don't that prob Who knows? Who knows? Might have to do that again for the next couple of weeks, but thanks for being flexible, and I'll know in advance um next time for sure. Thanks to you amazing moderators for keeping this going. You're great. I so appreciate all the work you put in. And yeah, to everybody for joining me. I'm gonna go to sleep now. I'm really tired, but I didn't want to miss this. Um, and I will see you Tuesday at 12 Eastern. In the meantime, you know the drill. Please stay safe and be kind.